"Are you out of your mind?" my lawyer, Donald Jenkins, practically shouted. "They've got you nailed to the wall. There must be at least a dozen witnesses, including your wife, no less. And let's not forget about the crystal clear footage from 3 different security cameras, all in broad daylight. Your fingerprints and DNA are all over the place. Not to mention, your motive is fully documented. Plus, the cops caught you red-handed, and their body cams captured the whole thing." He had a point. I couldn't argue with that. He probably thought I was out of my mind for turning down the plea deal. If I accepted the deal, I'd be looking at 5 years in prison, plus another 5 on probation. But if I took my chances and went to trial? The judge could hit me with 15, maybe even 20 years. Any rational person wouldn't even be in this mess to begin with. And if they were, they would have at least tried to cover their tracks. Not me, though. I did it, and I didn't care who knew it. Look, Donald sighed, clearly frustrated. You hired me to represent you, and my job is to give you sound advice. I'm telling you straight up, you don't stand a chance in court. The DA's offering this deal because they've got a backlog of cases. By accepting it, you save yourself the trouble of a trial. It's unnecessary to drag this out. My best advice is to take the plea. It's not what you want to hear, but trust me, no lawyer on this planet can get you out of this. I sure can't. He took a deep breath, then continued. If this goes to trial, I can't protect you. All I'll be able to do is sit beside you while the DA rips you apart. They've got all the evidence, and I've got nothing to fight back with. Once they rest their case, I'll have no choice but to fold mine too. I don't even have a single witness I can call for your defense. You're done. The only thing you can do now is cut your losses and serve as little time as possible. Going to court will just bleed you dry, and it'll only make things worse. So, lawyer, I asked calmly, when's the trial set to start? How long will it last, and how soon after that is sentencing? Donald blinked, clearly thrown off by how calm I was. Well, with the whole COVID-19 situation, the trial won't happen for at least 6 months. Before that, we'll have an arraignment, a hearing on the charges, and an evidentiary hearing. I'll file a few motions, the DA will file some of their own, and there'll be a few other legal steps. I might be able to delay the trial, but it won't change the outcome. Good. You need to call my sister and let her know what my bail will be. She'll post it for me. It won't be cheap, but that's her problem, not yours. Oh, and send her your invoices too. She'll handle those. Donald walked out, probably thinking I was completely nuts and considering whether he should arrange a psych evaluation. Maybe an insanity plea would work in my favor. Either way, I didn't mind paying him a bit more for his efforts, even though I knew it wouldn't make a difference. Now, you're probably wondering what's really going on here. Let me take you back a few months. My name's Dan Malloy. I'm 56 years old and live with my wonderful wife, Kimberly. We've been married for 25 years. We've got 2 great daughters, Gina and Susan. Gina's 22 and finishing up her last year of college, studying mechanical engineering, just like her old man. Susan, or Sue as I call her, is 20 and majoring in business administration. Both of them plan to take over the family business when I eventually retire. We run a small company, and while we're not swimming in cash, we've always lived comfortably. We own our house, still making mortgage payments, but we've only got a few years left until it's all ours. We drive decent cars, not luxury, but solid and reliable. I made sure we had enough stashed away in investments to retire comfortably when I hit 65. Kimberly has been a stay-at-home mom ever since Gina was born, and once both girls were in school, she kept herself busy by volunteering for various charities during the day. When Sue left for college, her volunteer work ramped up, filling even more of her time. I didn't have a problem with it, in fact, I encouraged her. It seemed to make her happy, and it gave us a chance to attend more events in the evenings together. Our sex life was incredible when we were dating, engaged, and even during the early years of marriage. Sure, things slowed down a bit when the kids came along, but it still happened often enough and kept that spark between us. As the girls got older and our responsibilities grew, things became a little less frequent and a lot more predictable. But lovemaking still gave us both satisfaction, even if it wasn't as thrilling as it used to be. We probably did it 2 or 3 times a week, not exactly wild, but it worked for us. Everything fell apart on a crisp autumn morning just last week. I had been feeling worn out for a while, constantly drained, both physically and mentally. Kim noticed and kept pushing me to get checked out by a doctor, so I finally went. After getting some tests done, I left the office feeling pretty low. The news wasn't good. I didn't feel like going back to work that day. I needed space to think, make plans, and figure out how to break the news to Kim and the girls. I ended up driving to a small sports bar to grab a burger and a drink while trying to wrap my head around things. While waiting at a red light near a local college, something caught my eye: Kim's car. It wasn't a shock, she tutored students at the college from time to time. She had an English degree from before we got married, and she's always had a passion for literature. What was surprising, though, was that she wasn't alone. And she wasn't even driving. She was in the passenger seat, while a young, huge black guy was behind the wheel. I was a couple of cars back, and they didn't notice me. It only took a second to see that Kim's full attention was on this guy, like nothing else mattered. Something about it just felt off, so I decided to follow them, staying a few cars behind. About 5 minutes later, I watched them pull into a cheap motel. As they turned into the parking lot, I veered into a shopping center across the street. I sat there and watched as they got out of the car and walked into the motel lobby together. They headed up to the second floor, and sure enough, they entered one of the rooms. It didn't take a genius to figure out that they weren't going in there to discuss literature, they were about to study anatomy. 2 hours later, they left the room. By then, I had grabbed my digital camera, which I always kept on hand for work. I had my zoom lens ready and snapped some detailed shots of them. His hand was on her back as they casually walked back toward the lobby. That's when it hit me, I recognized him. He was the star player on the university's football team, set to graduate this year. Scouts from every NFL team were watching him closely, and most mock drafts had him going in the mid to late first round. Even the toughest critics agreed he was a lock for the NFL. I've always been a bit of a football nerd. I love following the games, diving deep into the analytics. It helps me win more than I lose when it comes to office pools and betting on games. But here's the real kicker: while I've been enjoying stats and scores, my wife has been cheating on me. For me, this wasn't just infidelity, it was the complete and utter collapse of our marriage. We'd talked about the sanctity of marriage before. To me, those vows meant something, they weren't just words. They were a promise to God, to our family and friends, and most importantly, to each other. It's not a commitment you can just walk away from until death do us part. But here we are. And while I once thought I'd fight to keep her, the truth is, if she's dumb enough to leave, I'm smart enough to let her go. I'd already fought for her once when we were dating and got engaged. I won that fight the day she said I do. I wasn't about to fight for her again. With that realization, I knew everything had to change: all the plans, all the decisions I'd made about our future. I needed a completely new plan. After they left the motel, I waited about 10 minutes, letting the shock settle a bit before starting my car and heading to the sports bar like I'd originally planned. When I got there, I grabbed my notepad and found a booth in the back, somewhere private. I ordered a burger, a beer, and a bourbon from the waitress and started laying out my thoughts. I made 4 columns. What happens to me? What do I do about my daughters? What do I do with the traitor? And what about the fool? First up, me. Did it even matter what happened to me? Honestly, not really. The whole situation with my wife had made this column pointless. I couldn't forgive her, not after what she'd done. There was no chance for reconciliation, no future together. But what hurt the most was knowing I probably didn't have a future with my daughters either. Even though I loved them with everything I had, I realized I wouldn't be there for their college graduations. I wouldn't walk them down the aisle on their wedding days. I wouldn't get to hold their children in my lap. The pain of that hit me hard. Next, I thought about my daughters. Sure, they were adults now and could technically take care of themselves, but I still wanted to make sure they were okay. They needed to finish college, get some solid experience, and then take over the firm. I had to make sure they had enough resources to support them until they were completely independent. If I could leave them a little extra to make their lives easier, even better. Then came the traitor, my wife. I was determined to hurt her as much as she'd hurt me. I'd given her everything I had, and this is how she repaid me? Well, fine. She wasn't getting anything more from me, not after this. And finally, the fool, her lover. He'd taken one of the most valuable things in my life, so I'd make sure to take away what mattered most to him. Once I finished brainstorming, I started working on a flowchart. For those who don't know, a flowchart is an engineering tool used to map out decisions or events. It's an if-then kind of thing. You start with a step, and based on the outcome, you follow different branches. If yes, do this. If no, do that. It helps solve problems, anticipate issues, and navigate obstacles before they even come up. 4 hours, 3 beers, and 2 double bourbons later, I had the basic outline of my plan. Unfortunately, after 3 beers and 2 double bourbons, I wasn't exactly in the best shape to deal with a cheater. Yeah, I probably shouldn't have, but I went back to the office. I wasn't drunk. 5 drinks over 4 hours wasn't too bad, but still, I'd likely exceeded the limit. I have a small room in my office with a bed and an attached bathroom, useful for those long nights when a deadline was looming. While it wasn't common for me to stay there, it wasn't unheard of either. I sent a quick message to Kim, telling her I had a deadline and some complications had come up. I'd be staying late and crashing at the office for the night. The next morning, I got up and carried on with my plans. By noon, I had everything laid out step by step. By the end of the day, I had gone through every detail and made adjustments as minor issues cropped up. I gave myself 30 days to take care of everything before executing the final step. I ended up staying at work 2 hours later than usual, rearranging steps and refining deadlines before finally heading home. By then, I'd gained enough control over my emotions to act like everything was normal. I'd even crafted a cover story for why I was so exhausted and what the doctor had said. I'd tell Kim that age and overwork were catching up to me. The doctor recommended cutting back on work and playing more sports to get my health in check. Of course, I'd say I was too tired for anything intimate for a while until this new lifestyle took effect. The truth was, I could never touch her again, but she didn't need to know that. That night, I managed to spend a normal evening at home. I didn't even have to fake being tired. I was genuinely exhausted, both mentally and physically. Kim tried to be gentle with me, sensing something was off, but I was simply too worn out from the stress and sleepless night. She asked about a project I was supposedly working on, and I fed her some nonsense about time-sensitive designs and shifting parameters. She'd never been involved in the company, so I could tell her just about anything, and she'd believe it. The next morning, I was up early. I had appointments to make and people to talk to. I should probably mention here that everything we owned, the business, the house, everything, was registered in my name only. Sure, we started the business after we got married, but I was the one with the income and authority, so it was set up as a sole proprietorship. The company was mine, and Kim's name wasn't on a single document related to our home either. The mortgage was in my name alone, too. It just made things easier. Kim had no income, so adding her would have hurt her credit, and at the time, it didn't matter to either of us. We were supposed to spend the rest of our lives together. If something happened to me, she'd inherit it all. I'd even made sure my will said as much. By the end of the week, I had a new will signed and notarized. I also hired a private investigator to follow Kim and gather more evidence of her affair. I didn't need confirmation for myself, I already knew the truth. But the girls, they'd need something concrete to understand what their mother had been up to. It was a simple step, but the next few would be more complicated, involving lawyers and business professionals. "Carly, how's my beloved sister doing today?" I asked when she picked up the phone. "Damn it, I better be your favorite sister, since I'm the only one you've got, you idiot," she replied with a laugh. "What do you want?" "I'm deeply offended that you immediately assume I want something just because I'm calling," I teased, trying to keep my tone light. Yes, when you start a conversation with that favorite crap, you always want something. So, what is it this time?" Carly replied, her sarcasm cutting through, as usual. Well, aside from your charming remarks, I actually wanted to see my beloved and most beautiful sister. It's been a while, and I thought maybe I could treat you to lunch today. Oh, crap, it's worse than I thought. Favorite and beautiful, and you're buying? Let me look outside and check if the 4 horsemen of the apocalypse are on their way, she shot back. Carly and I had always gotten along well. After our parents passed, it was pretty much just the two of us left. She'd divorced her cheating husband about 5 years ago, picked herself up, and went back to school for an MBA. Now, she was working as an account manager for a manufacturing firm, one of my clients, actually. She was too smart for that role, though. All she needed was a little more experience before she could climb higher, maybe even become vice president one day. If she hadn't married that idiot and quit her job years back, she could have been a CEO by now. Sis, seriously, I need your help. Take the whole day off and meet me at Hammerheads at 11 o'clock. I knew my voice betrayed how desperate I was, and Carly definitely caught on. Oh, crap, everything's bad, isn't it? She asked, her tone shifting. This is worse than I can imagine, huh? Please, come. Of course, big brother. I'll be there. Not only because you're my brother, but we both know I owe you everything for what you've done for me. You don't owe me a thing, little sister. I helped you because you're family. That's just what family does. Well, this time, I'll do what family does. I was sitting at the same table in the far corner of the restaurant when Carly arrived. The hostess pointed her my way, and she came over, sliding into the seat across from me. Do you have to head back to work today? I asked, already knowing her answer. Nope. You asked me to take the afternoon off, and I did, she confirmed. Hearing that, I placed our order with the waitress. I already knew what she liked, so I went ahead and ordered for both of us. Bourbon at lunch? Damn, this really must be the apocalypse, she said, raising an eyebrow. Almost, I muttered. Okay, Carly, here's the deal. You know I've wanted you to come work with me for a long time. I understand you're determined to make your own way, to avoid any appearance of nepotism. But that's just not true. You're amazing at what you do, and your talent is wasted where you are. I need you. Now, more than ever. She gave me a soft look. Dan, I really do appreciate the offer. I'm just not sure how it would work. We get along great, but what would it be like with you as my boss? I've heard horror stories about family members working together. I sighed, running a hand through my hair. I didn't want to do this, but I'm desperate. When I said I need you to come work for my company, I wasn't exaggerating. I need more than just another employee. I need you to take over as CEO. I need you to run the firm, at least until Gina and Sue are ready. I need you to mentor them, prepare them to take over. Once they turn 30, you can start handing over responsibilities if you think they're ready by then. Gina will likely step in as chief operating officer, while Sue can take over as general manager, I explained. By then, you can either retire or work as a consultant from time to time. Carly frowned, sensing something deeper beneath my words. Dan, you're kind of starting to worry me. If I take over your company and train your daughters to manage it after they graduate, what exactly will you be doing? You kind of glossed over that part. I sighed, not ready to face what I had been avoiding, but there was no turning back now. That's why I wanted you to just accept my offer without getting into details. I was hoping to explain it differently, but now I guess I'll have to blame you for this, I said with a weak attempt at humor, before taking a long, heavy breath. Carly. I found out 2 things last week on the same day. And no one else knows this yet. I could see her stiffen slightly, waiting for the blow to land. I'm dying, I said quietly. Pancreatic cancer. They can't do anything about it. At best, I have 6 months left, but it's probably more like 3, maybe 4. Carly stared at me, stunned into silence. And there's more. Kim's cheating on me. She blinked, as if the weight of it all was sinking in one hit after another. I'll handle the situation with the girls, but I need you to step up, Carly. You'll be the trustee of the property. Kim's not getting a single thing. I've already put everything into trusts that you'll manage with the help of my lawyer. The will's been updated to reflect that. I've even transferred ownership of the house to a company that's now co-owned by you, Gina, and Sue. I could see her head spinning from all the information. She took a deep breath as I continued, "You're going to need to cover for me at work. For the next 2 weeks, spend a few hours in my office every evening and some time on weekends. We'll use that time to get you up to speed. I'll be around to help for maybe a week or two after you start, but I can't do more than that." We sat there for a long time, in silence. Carly was trying to process what I had just dumped on her. I waited, giving her the time she needed to absorb everything. When the waitress came to collect our plates, Carly ordered another shot of bourbon. "You're a prick for putting me in this position," she finally said, but there was a hint of emotion in her voice. "But of course, I'll do it. You're not really giving me much of a choice, are you?" "I know, and I'm sorry," I murmured. "Trust me, I wish I didn't have to do this. But there are a few more things I need your help with. We can talk about those later." "Am I going to be mad about these other things?" she asked, giving me a soft, knowing smile. "You can't even imagine," I said, half-jokingly. We spent the rest of the day talking about the firm and the steps we needed to take to prepare. Carly wasn't an engineer, but her strength was in the business side of things. I reassured her I'd promote one of my senior engineers to handle the technical aspects of the business. We headed back to my office, where we started going over invoices, reports, and the other documents she'd need to familiarize herself with. Before we left, she used my computer to draft a letter of resignation from her job. From that point on, things started moving fast. Every day, I felt a little more exhausted, worn down by both the illness and the endless tasks I needed to complete. My days were spent at the office, handling the firm, and my evenings were spent teaching Carly everything she needed to know. We also put in long hours on the weekends. Kim began noticing how tired I was. I'd come home, grab a quick snack, and fall into bed, too exhausted to do much of anything else. There was no intimacy. She tried to talk to me about my long hours, and I just told her I had a couple of big projects to finish, but everything would calm down in 2 weeks. In truth, those weeks would be the last I'd spend with her. I explained to Kim that I was making a few changes at work to reduce my workload, but that it required me to put in the hours now to ensure everything ran smoothly later on. She wasn't thrilled, but she seemed to accept it for the time being. That Friday was Carly's last day at her old job. She was set to officially start with me on Monday. In the meantime, I had other matters to attend to. The private investigator had finished his work, and I sat in his office, reviewing the results. It was all there, clear as day. Kim really was having an affair with a football player. 3 times a week, they'd leave the campus together and head straight for a motel. There were photos, and even a short video taken through a slightly open curtain. The footage left no doubt about what they were doing. I thanked the investigator, paid the rest of his fee, and left with the evidence, both on paper and a flash drive. That Sunday evening, Carly and I wrapped up our discussions, preparing for her first day at the firm the next morning. It had been a long day, and I could feel it in every part of my body. I knew I had to get things done this week before I became too drained to function. "Okay, Carly," I said, leaning back in my chair. "We've gone over everything you need to do. Starting tomorrow at 7 a.m., you're officially in charge." We had already met with the lawyer and the accountant earlier in the week. All the signatures were notarized, and everything was set. Carly now held control over the trusts and the company. "There's just one more thing I need you to do," I said carefully, watching her face. "When my lawyer calls you, I need you to post bail for me." Carly's eyes widened. "Crap. You're about to do something stupid, aren't you?" "That depends on your definition of stupid," I replied with a smirk. "But yeah, probably." She gave me a concerned look. "Okay, just so we're clear, homicide suspects aren't usually granted bail." "Nobody's going to die," I reassured her. "Don't worry. I want them alive, to live with the regret." "Is this why you don't want Kim to post bail for you? You don't think she'll do it?" "I'm not going to physically hurt her," I said, my voice hardening. "But no, I don't expect her to be the one willing to bail me out. Carly sighed, shaking her head. Fine. Whatever you're planning, I'll be there. By Wednesday afternoon, I was crouched behind a large SUV parked next to Kim's car in the motel parking lot. I could hear them talking as they walked back toward the vehicle. My heart pounded in my chest, the bat gripped tightly in my hands. This had to be fast and brutal from the start. He was bigger than me, no doubt about that. And he had the strength and stamina of a professional athlete. Meanwhile, I was weakened, my body worn out by the cancer. I heard the beep of the car unlocking as he pressed the key fob. He chuckled at something Kim said while opening the passenger door for her. He didn't see me coming. As soon as he opened his own door, I sprang into action. The bat was already swinging as I rounded the back of the SUV. Kim's eyes went wide with shock as she saw me, but she didn't even have time to scream. The bat came down hard on his right hand, which was resting on the roof of the car. He let out a yell of pain, but I didn't stop. As soon as the bat bounced off his hand, I brought it up again, delivering a crushing blow straight to his groin. He dropped to the ground in agony, trying to grab at both his shattered arm and his crotch at the same time. But I wasn't done. The bat came down again, this time smashing into each of his knees. I could hear the sickening crack as both kneecaps broke. Just as I raised the bat again to strike his right elbow, a searing pain shot through my body. My muscles tensed, and I felt a violent convulsion before everything went black. When I came to, I was lying face down on the pavement, my wrists cuffed tightly behind my back. I groaned, blinking up at the flashing lights of a patrol car. Apparently, my timing had been terrible. A patrol car had stopped nearby just as I launched my attack. The cops had seen everything from the moment I jumped out from behind the SUV to the brutal beating I had unleashed on Kim's lover. They hit me with a taser before I could finish breaking his left elbow. The shock was enough to stop me cold, and as I lay there, twitching on the ground, the ambulance arrived. 3 more patrol cars showed up soon after. Once I regained consciousness, they hauled me up and placed me in the back of one of the cruisers. Through the window, I watched as Kim frantically gave her version of events to a policewoman. Her story seemed animated, her arms flailing as she tried to explain why her lover was writhing on the pavement with multiple broken bones. The irony wasn't lost on me. Here I was, the one in cuffs, and she was hysterical, painting herself as the victim. They took me to the station, booked me, and threw me into an interrogation room. I knew how this went. Psychological tricks, leaving me alone for an hour or two, the classic good cop bad cop routine. They spouted the usual nonsense, how everything would be easier if I just confessed. I wasn't falling for it. Why would I? Confession or no confession, it didn't matter to me. I already knew how this story was going to end. I was dying, and nothing I said in that room would change that. As far as I was concerned, they were just wasting their time. The district attorney knew it too. She had a backlog of cases stretching back due to the pandemic, and my case wasn't exactly high on her list. In the grand scheme of things, it was a lost cause for her. The outcome was practically written already. But that didn't stop her from offering a deal through my lawyer. I refused. "Are you out of your mind?" My lawyer, Donald Jenkins, was exasperated. He paced back and forth, waving his arms as he tried to get through to me. "They've got an airtight case, Evan. There are probably a dozen witnesses, including your wife. Not to mention, there are clear video recordings from 3 separate surveillance cameras. And you did this in broad daylight. Your fingerprints and DNA are on every weapon you used, and your motive is well documented. Oh, and let's not forget the cops caught you red-handed. Their body cams captured the entire attack." He had a point, several good ones in fact. I could see why he thought I was crazy for rejecting the plea deal. If I took it, I'd get 5 years in prison, followed by 5 years of probation. If I went to trial and lost, the judge could hit me with 15 to 20 years, easy. But here's the thing, if I were a normal, rational person, I wouldn't be in this mess in the first place. I wouldn't have committed the crime, or at the very least, I would have been smarter about it, maybe covered my tracks, planned an alibi. But I didn't care about that. I did what I did, and I wanted everyone to know. Donald sighed and rubbed his temples. Listen, you hired me to represent and advise you, and I'm telling you straight, you don't stand a chance in court. The only reason the DA is offering this deal is because of the case backlog. If you take the deal, you save yourself time, money, and a lot of unnecessary suffering. It's not ideal, but it's the best option. He leaned across the table, his voice dropping to a more urgent tone. Evan, no lawyer in the world can save you from this. Not even me. If we go to trial, all I can do is sit there and watch the DA tear you apart. I won't even have a defense to offer. As soon as they finish, I'll have no choice but to rest my case. I don't have a single witness to call on your behalf. You're done. The only thing left is to minimize the damage and try to get you out of this with as little prison time as possible. I listened, but the truth was, I didn't care about prison. I wasn't afraid of serving time. What mattered was that I had made my point. Going to court wasn't about money or consequences anymore. It was about seeing this thing through, for better or worse. Donald could see it in my face. He knew I wasn't budging. He sighed again, defeated. Going to court is just going to make things worse for you, he said quietly, almost pleading now. But if that's what you want, I can't stop you. So, lawyer, when will the trial happen? How long will it last? And how long after that until sentencing? I asked, keeping my voice calm, almost indifferent. Donald's eyes glazed over. He looked at me like he couldn't quite wrap his head around how little I seemed to care about my own fate. He let out a long sigh. Well, he began, because of the coronavirus delays, the trial itself is probably about 6 months out. Before that, there'll be the arraignment, the hearing on the charges, and an evidentiary hearing. I'll file motions, the DA will file theirs, a few other things in between. I could try to delay the trial, but in the end, it won't change anything. Great. Call my sister, let her know what my bail is. She'll post it for me, I said, leaning back. It won't be cheap, but that's not your concern. Also, send her your invoices. She'll make sure you get paid. He looked at me for a moment, probably wondering if I was mentally sound. I wouldn't have been surprised if he was considering getting me evaluated for a plea of insanity. Honestly, I didn't care. If it came to that, I'd pay him more for trying. It was all the same to me at this point. Kim actually surprised me by visiting while I was still in jail. I'd been charged and given bail, but Carly decided to let me sit in there for a couple of days before she bailed me out. She said I needed to cool off. Kim walked in with that guilty expression she'd worn since the day I caught her. She didn't waste any time with pleasantries. I'm sorry, she started, her voice shaky. Fine, I said, cutting her off. It didn't mean anything, right? There wasn't any real romance or feelings. It was just easy lovemaking. She hesitated. I could see her squirming, searching for the right words. Yes, he was just so big. Big and strong. He had that confidence, you know? The kind that takes over a whole room, she said, her voice cracking. And yes, he was a little better than you in bed. I chuckled dryly, shaking my head. Congratulations. I'm glad he could make you happy. She wasn't happy now, though. Her face crumpled, and before I could say another word, she burst into sobs. Then she abruptly stood up and ran out. The next day, Carly came to pick me up after I was released on bail. She didn't waste time with pleasantries either. As soon as we were back at the office, she hit me with the update. Well, if you wanted to ruin his life, you did it. He'll never play sports again, not even for fun. His right hand is crushed. They're estimating he'll recover maybe 50% use of it at best. Both his knees are destroyed, he'll be able to walk, but that's it. His elbow? That's never going to fully extend again, she said, leaning back in her chair. I nodded slowly, absorbing the information. So, I did it. Why the massacre, you ask? Simple. He took something incredibly valuable from me, so I repaid him in kind. He took my wife, I took football from him. An eye for an eye. Carly sighed and gave me a look of exasperation. Evan, you realize they're going to sue, right? Sue who? For what? I said, shrugging. If they try to sue me, they'll find there's nothing to take. I'll be dead long before it even makes it to court. What are they going to do, seize my property? I don't have any. All I've got is a couple $1,000 that'll keep me going for the next few months. They can sue all they want, but there's nothing to recover. She leaned in, her voice more serious. What about Kim? They can go after her. I shrugged again, completely unfazed. I don't care. She doesn't have the money to pay them off either. Besides, it's not my problem anymore. Carly shook her head, realizing that there was no convincing me otherwise. Fine. So, what's your plan now? My plan? I paused for a moment, letting the silence hang in the air. I'm going to die. I refused the deal they offered me. Trial's in a few months, and by then, I'll be gone. Her face softened, her voice almost pleading now. Evan, you need to talk to your daughters. They should know, and they care about what you did, Carly said, urgency in her voice. I plan to do this tonight, actually. You can do this in just a few minutes. They're on their way. I've reserved a conference room for you for the rest of the day. Half an hour later, I found myself sitting across from my two daughters at a long conference table, their faces filled with concern. Dad, what the hell? The video of you hitting that guy with a baseball bat is all over the news. And what the hell was Mom doing there? Gina blurted out, disbelief etched across her features. I pushed the folder I'd prepared toward them, letting the documents spill out. Your mom was there because they had just left the motel room. He was your mother's lover. Are you serious? This guy was a star football player in college and was expected to be drafted in the first or second round, Susan said, her voice wavering with shock. You ruined his career. Yes, I knew that, I replied flatly. I did it on purpose. He took the love of my life, so I took what he loves. But now he'll sue you for everything you have, and you'll go to jail for a long time. Susan shot back. Neither will happen, I said, leaning forward. First, I made sure I had nothing to lose. I don't have any assets that anyone can take. The company is no longer in my name, it belongs to a trust managed by Carly. The money is in trust funds for the two of you. The house is in your name. Your mother has no access to any of this. What you do for her is no longer my concern. Is there any chance you can make peace before you go to prison? Gina asked, her voice laced with desperation. No chance at all. I shook my head, feeling the weight of their expectations. And I won't go to jail. Dad, be realistic. There's no way you won't be convicted. We watched all the news, read all the articles. There's no way you can get away with what you did. I won't get away with this, I admitted, the truth sinking in. I'm not even trying. Suddenly, my emotions crashed over me like a tidal wave. The moment my beautiful daughters entered the room, I realized I wouldn't be there for their college graduations, wouldn't walk them down the aisle at their weddings, would never hug my future grandchildren. The thought was suffocating. Tears began to fall as I cried, overwhelmed by the impending loss. I felt their arms wrap around me, comforting and warm. Oh my God, what happened, Daddy? Susan asked, panic in her voice. I'm dying, little ones, I managed to say, the truth tearing through me. I have a really bad form of cancer. I have 2 months left at best. Both girls screamed, their eyes wide with horror. Just then, I felt another embrace from behind. Carly was joining in, tears streaming down her cheeks. The four of us sat there, tangled together, letting our emotions flow until the weight became more bearable. Eventually, I took a deep breath and sat the girls back down in their chairs. As you can see, I won't be here long before my trial begins. I'll be dead before any trial even starts. Once I leave, they won't be able to get anything from me. Everything I had was disposed of long before the attack. They can't even foreclose on the house because I sold it to a company. The proceeds from the sale went into a trust, I explained, trying to maintain my composure. This trust will be available to you when you turn 30. I've liquidated all my assets, cashed out my investments, and donated the proceeds to charity. Why didn't you tell us about this earlier? Gina asked, her voice a mix of confusion and concern. I found out about all this about a month ago, I replied. Right after I left the doctor's office, I saw your mother's car driving away from the university. He was driving, and she was in the passenger seat. I followed them to the motel. I watched them enter the room and waited for about 2 hours until they left. I was devastated. Not only did I learn I had only months to live, but I also discovered that the love of my life was cheating on me. I spent the next 2 days planning my response. We shared more tears and heartache over the next hour, then it was time to shift focus. I invited Carly to join us, and we began discussing the company's new organizational structure. When Gina graduates, she'll start working with engineers. She'll participate in projects and attend management meetings. Once she gets her PE license, she'll manage her own projects. Over time, we hope she'll help Carly run the company. By the time Gina turns 30, she should be able to step into the role of Chief Operating Officer. I turned to Susan. As for you, you'll become Carly's assistant when you graduate. You'll work closely with her on the business side, and eventually, you'll take over as CEO. With Gina managing operations and you overseeing the business side, everything should work out well. Carly will be available to consult and mediate between you two. A week later, I was living with my sister and hadn't spoken to Kim since her visit to me in jail. I sat on the couch in Carly's living room, the sun shining brightly. Across from me sat a striking red-haired woman. Good morning. This is Amy Brown from Crap News. I'm here with Dan Malloy, who is charged with causing grievous bodily injury during a brutal attack on a star player. Mr. Malloy has kindly agreed to an interview, she announced, turning to the cameras before focusing on me. Mr. Malloy, I'm surprised you're willing to give this interview. Aren't you concerned about the judge's gag order on this case? It doesn't bother me at all, I replied, feeling a mix of defiance and resignation. By the time this airs and he sees it, there's nothing he can do about it. But he could charge you with contempt of court and send you to prison. I chuckled. Honestly, I really despise the divorce laws in this country. A wife can cheat on her husband as much as she wants, and if he tries to divorce her, she'll get the children, the house, child support, maintenance, often most of the other assets. The poor man ends up in a cheap apartment, living off ramen, giving most of his income to his ex-wife while she enjoys life with her string of lovers. They reward traitors and punish those who've done nothing wrong. Aren't you afraid of going to prison? Not in the least. What about the long prison sentence you're expecting? First of all, I haven't actually been convicted of anything. In our country, we hold on to the principle of innocent until proven guilty. Yes, but you must admit there's irrefutable evidence against you. I'm well aware of that, I replied, unfazed. But I'm not the least bit worried. Fine, I can't wait to hear how you can be so confident. What about Jamal's lawsuit against you? I understand he's seeking over $40 million in compensation for lost income, pain and suffering, and lifelong medical care. Blood from a stone. That won't happen. I'm unemployed and homeless. I have nothing to take. But you had a successful engineering firm and a huge house. That's not true anymore. I sold my business and home over a month ago. I put everything I owned into trust funds to ensure my children would be taken care of if anything happened to me. All of this was completely legal and ethical. All taxes have been paid. I don't even have a salary to garnish. Let's get back to the attack. You never denied doing it, but you haven't explained why. Why did you attack him so viciously? It seems you deliberately targeted areas that would ruin his chances of an NFL career. Oh, that was certainly my intention. If the police hadn't used a taser on me, I would have crushed his other elbow and delivered a few more strikes to the groin before stopping. My goal was never to eliminate him, just to maim him and destroy his capabilities. The attempted homicide charge from the DA is absurd. I aimed to avoid blows that could have killed him. If I wanted him dead, my first strike would have hit his head, not his arm. So, why did you attack him in the first place? Isn't it obvious? Where did the attack take place? In the motel parking lot, I answered. And who was with him? My wife. They had an affair. They had just left the room they'd been in for 2 hours. I decided that if he could take away the most important thing in my life, my soulmate, I would take away the most important thing in his football career. You certainly achieved that goal. What about your wife? It takes two to tango. Are you planning to take revenge on her? Yes, but I won't reveal how. I won't use physical violence against her, so you don't need to worry about that. My revenge will be completely legal. Oh, she will suffer greatly, but she won't be able to do anything about it. In fact, what I planned has already been set in motion, and she doesn't know it yet. When will she find out? When will this interview air? Let's focus on your upcoming prison sentence. It doesn't intimidate me. I still haven't been convicted. Then it's okay. How about we return to the question of your likely conviction and prison sentence? Why are you so sure you won't be convicted and sent to prison? Let me recount the events of the day that changed everything, just over a month ago. I was feeling unusually tired and exhausted, so I went to the doctor for some tests. About a week later, I came back for the results. They weren't good. I had just left the doctor's office when I spotted my wife's car leaving campus. It struck me as odd because Jamal was driving, and Kim was in the passenger seat. I followed them to the motel and waited several hours for them to come out. After witnessing them together, I hired a private investigator to gather concrete evidence of what I had seen. Following the doctor's advice, I initially planned to care for Kim, but that was off the table now. Everything I did was focused on ensuring my daughters were taken care of. They were always going to take over the business, I just made it official. I hired a talented businesswoman to act as CEO and prepare the girls for their future roles. I also converted the company from a sole proprietorship to an LLC, transferring authority out of my name. All my money is now in a trust fund for the girls, managed by someone else. I even placed the title of my home into a trust fund as a gift to them. So, I'm not the least bit worried about any repercussions, as I won't be around to face them. The doctor informed me that I had aggressive pancreatic cancer, incurable. I was given, at best, 2 months to live, more likely, I'd be gone within a month. My trial wouldn't even start for another 3 months. What could they do? As for my wife, I was leaving her with nothing. Maybe our daughters would feel sorry for her and help, but that was no longer my concern. Additionally, documents proving her affair with the student would be sent to the University Council and relevant law enforcement agencies. I also had copies ready for you, should you want them. And I must inform you that copies would also go to all major media outlets. You've just ruined their lives. Don't you think that's a bit extreme? Not at all. They ruined my life, or what little was left of it. Imagine receiving the worst possible news, only to find your spouse isn't there for you. Less than half an hour later, you discover they're cheating. Yes, I'm facing death soon, but they stole my chance for comfort in my final days. They ruined the rest of my life, so I chose to ruin theirs. At least they'll still be alive and have a shot at restoring things. Maybe he can serve as an example for others who prey on married women. Fine. That's all we have for now. Thank you for agreeing to this interview. This is Amy Brown from Crap News, she said, gathering her notes. She shook my hand and handed me a note before leaving. Moments later, a stunning blonde entered and sat next to me. A few minutes later, she was ready, and the bright lights turned on again. This is Jessica Moore from Crap News. I'm here with Dan Malloy, who has been seriously angered by recent events. I decided it was best to get all the interviews done in one day before he could retaliate. This was my last day of freedom, and it didn't matter much where I ended up tomorrow. If he wanted to throw me in jail for contempt of court, it would cost him dearly. My lawyer would handle the legal fallout from the interviews. That pretty much concluded our discussions for the day. I mustered the little strength I had left, but by the end of it, I was utterly exhausted. Early the next morning, Carly took me to hospice, where I would remain until my time was up. The judge had shown me no respect. He was ready to send the police to drag me back to jail when my lawyer and doctor informed him I needed to be admitted to the infirmary due to my health condition. The costs would be significant, they added, and they would ensure the media was aware of this situation. Instead of sending me back, the judge put me on an ankle monitor to keep tabs on my movements. I chuckled at the absurdity. I had nowhere to go anyway. Carly and the girls visited me almost daily. I understood they couldn't always be there, but their presence meant the world to me. Sometimes, I could video chat with them, and they kept me informed about everything happening outside. Kim tried to visit, but I had her crossed off my visitor list. She sent letters with the girls, which I tossed in the trash as soon as they left. I had no interest in what she had to say. The district attorney initially tried to reschedule the trial, but my lawyer fought back. It quickly became clear that it didn't matter, as I wouldn't be able to attend anyway. My lawyer then launched a public campaign, arguing that pursuing a case against a dying man was a waste of resources. Eventually, the DA quietly dropped the case. A lawsuit was filed against both Kim and me, as we were still married. She would be responsible for my debts after I passed. I couldn't help but laugh at the irony. My girls were here with me, along with Carly. I was so exhausted that I felt like I had reached the end. I didn't want to fight anymore, I had nothing left to give. Then, I saw someone slowly entering my room, Kim, my wife. I hadn't seen her since she visited me in prison shortly after my arrest. Yes, I had asked her to come. She entered nervously and sat beside my bed. "I'm sorry," she said softly. "I know I also wish I hadn't gone too far." "No, you didn't overdo it. If you had left me anything, it would just be taken away in a lawsuit. Besides, I was the one who messed up and started the affair. I forgive you for that. I asked the girls to take care of you," she continued. "I don't want you to be hungry or homeless. I forgive you too. It's probably for the best. This fool will certainly try to take everything I have. As long as I have a place to live and enough money to get by, I'll be fine. I'm sorry I couldn't comfort you these past few months," she said, tears welling in her eyes. "That's all I wanted. I'll have to live with that regret for the rest of my life. Don't be too hard on yourself. I left you, I could have faced you instead of acting out of revenge. You did what you thought was right. You had every reason to be angry. Please know this, I never stopped loving you. I'll love you until the day I die. When that day comes, we'll meet again, and I'll love you forever. You are my soulmate." I had forgotten this for a while, but now it felt clear again. "I see that you're tired now. Sleep, my love. Go in peace." "We'll meet again, Dad," I whispered, reflecting on everything that had transpired. He had prepaid for his funeral and set up an account in case his mother needed assistance. The burial plots were already purchased, and we decided to have a private family ceremony. We allowed 2 reporters to attend, ensuring they understood the importance of maintaining respect during this time. Amy and Jessica were professional and considerate. Jamal filed a lawsuit against Dad's estate, but as you know, there was nothing to claim. He tried to take over the business and trust funds, but we successfully fought those claims. At the time of the attack, Dad had no ties to the firm, and the trust funds were protected. Carly, Sue, and I had no involvement in any wrongdoing. Mom's dishonesty also caught up with her. A judgment was issued against her for $20 million, even though she had nothing for them to take. The ruling still stood, but Sue and I made sure she had a place to stay. We hired her as a cook and housekeeper, providing her with free room and board and enough cash to manage her needs. Everything was above board, at least as far as anyone could prove. Jamal's lawyers would occasionally sniff around, but they were at a dead end. They wouldn't see a dime from him anytime soon, and eventually, they'd tire of the chase. For now, Mom's wealth remained secret to protect her from further anguish. She didn't date, instead, she enjoyed socializing with friends. Sometimes, she'd stay out until the next morning, But none of these encounters were serious, just casual friendships without commitment. She was adamant about remaining free until she reunited with Dad. As for Jamal, he was living with his parents, confined to the first-floor bedroom because he struggled with stairs. He'd been expelled from school, refusing to consider alternatives. Now, he spent his days playing video games, waiting for money to come to him. His parents were growing weary of the situation, and rumors circulated that they might soon evict him if he didn't take action. So, here's where we stand now. Sue and I have taken over the firm, with Aunt Carly stopping by occasionally to lend a hand. She's enjoying her retirement and even takes Mom on cruises a couple of times a year. Sue has found a steady boyfriend, and it seems pretty serious. As for me, I haven't found anyone who feels like Mr. Right. There are several Mr. Wrongs who are merely Mr. Correct for now. One of them, however, might soon lose the last word in his title. His name is Amy, and she's a local news reporter.